market refers to the untapped potential of all the would-be clients who aren't currently using legal services to solve their legal issues. So as a result, it not only refers to people who don't have access to legal services, but it also refers to all the unrealized revenue that law firms could be generating if they focused on providing an experience, an online experience for these would-be clients who are looking for this type of legal service. So what we're going to kind of cover today is first talk about why we want to automate and hopefully educate you a little bit on that and what the different models are. Then talk about a plan. So give you some practical advice on what the framework should be when you're thinking about building a legal product out before, during, and after, because it's not done once you launch a product. And then hopefully inspire you guys with some real world examples, including some of the stuff that Mauricio has worked on with A to J Tech and others. And then we're actually going to do a quick demo to show you how you can build your own workflow and get you used to the Documate system if you're interested in that, but I won't spend too much time on that. You can always book a demo if you want something longer for that. So especially now, there are a lot of new conditions that have come out of the pandemic that lead to automation and online legal services as being something that you really want to provide to your clients and a bigger opportunity. So you are going to want to gather client data in new ways, to collaborate with your clients, because you're not always meeting them in the office anymore. And probably after this is all over, that will have changed at least partially to make clients more comfortable taking their cell phone and filling out your client intake form in front of their couch instead of necessarily coming into your office and wearing a suit and tie for that meeting. Setting up systems for your firm. And I know that some of the people in the audience are more law firms, some of you are more students, and maybe some of you are more from academia, but this sort of applies, I think, across the board, depending on, regardless of which type of touch you have with the legal market. And then also this idea of new revenue sources. So we're able to generate new revenue by providing and packaging legal products in new and different ways. So some of the tips I'm going to give you today have been curated from customers that we have who have had successes in these areas. So before I launch into this, I do want to talk a little bit about why we started Documate, because we started not as a platform like we are now, but we started as actually and I don't know if TurboTax, that analogy resonates across Latin America. I don't think you guys have that there, but essentially we started as a legal application for domestic violence survivors. And that's why I think the journey is relevant to you guys. So I used to be a lawyer, I practiced law before, and I did a lot of pro bono work with domestic violence survivors. And I found that a lot of that work was routine, form-based, and template-based, at least the initial stages of the case. So what I really wanted to do was, instead of spending my time transcribing the name through 10 different documents and adding different sections that needed to be there, depending on whether the person had children or whether they wanted child custody or whether they were, had certain damages. Instead, I wanted that to be an automated system so that I could jump in, review the documents, and then take over for the parts of the case that were really important and needed my legal expertise. So I could represent the client at the hearing. I could train the client for the unexpected things that could come up at a hearing when you're talking about issues that are so personal and emotional. And I could help the client with their appeal. But that would push my hours and efficiency towards that time. So what we did is we built out a tool. We built out a full-fledged legal application that allowed domestic violence survivors to get onto the platform, answer a series of questions, and then generate their documents. We launched that, and there are lots of little mistakes that we made in doing that, which I'll talk about in a little bit in terms of what you should be thinking about before you actually launch a product. So we launched that, and through that process, what we realized was that there were so many other areas of law that we wanted to automate, and there were so many other people and lawyers who had the expertise in their brains for what they needed to automate, but didn't have the time or the money to spend on a software developer to build it all out. So since we had spent, in building out the domestic violence platform, I'm not an engineer. My co-founder is an engineer. In building that out, I had spent all this time researching the law and making it a robust system. And my co-founder, who's an engineer, had spent about 3 months building this all out and coding it all in. So what we decided was what we wanted to do was provide someone like me, like the former Dorna, who has no technical knowledge but has some idea of what she wants to build, give them the software tools to do that without having to pay a developer or spend a ton of time with coding. So we built Documate, and that was a response to that. And what Documate now is it's a no-code platform that allows you to build any kind of legal tool without knowing how to code. And we work a lot with the team at A2J Tech to have if you want support on any of that type of work as well. So moving on to kind of why are we building legal tools, and what does the law have to do with technology? I think if any of you guys are here at this session, you probably already sort of understand this, and you really bought into this idea that legal needs to be legal tech across the board, and technology needs to be incorporated into all parts of our practice. But here's a quote from Richard Susskind. He says, "More and more legal services will be enabled by the support of new technology. You can say that is for the technology industry to sort out, or you can be part of the technology industry." So we've seen this across the board within our practices as lawyers, but also within even the ethical rules that we have in many countries that say that technology needs to be part of your legal practice, and you need to as a lawyer be aware of the technology that exists out there in order to really be able to serve your clients properly. So moving to this next slide, this is a little bit of an illustration of what tools, what the kind of continuum of the different types of legal tools that exist are. So we'll start at the left-hand side. That's bespoke legal services. So this, I'm sure you're all very familiar with. This is the concept is you walk into a tall building and you ride up the elevator, you go sit in front of your lawyer, you give them one-on-one information, and the lawyer takes a blank Word document and creates your document for you. That's bespoke legal services. That will always exist. There are always going to be areas of law and situations that require that. But more and more, we are able to break down legal work into some of these other categories. So starting with standardization. So standardization is basically templatization. Many of you who have ever touched a document at a law firm have probably seen a document with tons of yellow brackets and footnotes that tell you when you should or should not insert certain sections into a document. And so that's standardization. You have these templates, you have checklists that allow you to determine what you want to include or not include. Moving down this continuum, systematization. So systematization is taking those templates and actually turning them into more of technology tools. So taking what you have in a template and making it automated so that you can click buttons and have that automatically be created. And then everything that we see on the right-hand side here in this vertical column is the externalization of these legal services. So that means that this is not necessarily all being done within your firm, but rather it's things that you're putting into your client's hands or you're putting into the hands of the public so that they can actually be part of the creation of those documents. So starting with things that are in the commons, so that could be blog posts, or that could be statutes that are already online. Some of this is not necessarily done by lawyers, but it's just done by institutions and academia. Then we have the no charge online tools and the charge online tools. And the reason I think it's important to make that distinction is because when you're building a legal product, the very first thing that you should think about is, do I want this to be something that is a standalone product that I'm going to sell to my clients or to the external world, and I'm going to make money off of right off the bat? Or is this going to be a no charge tool? And no charge could be because you're from a nonprofit background or you're providing tools for free for other reasons. But within a for-profit firm, that would be in the situation where you're using this as a marketing tool, as a lead generation tool. So maybe you're an estate planning attorney and you're providing a basic will package for free online, because you know that someone who wants a basic will is going to want a bunch of other accompanying documents later down the line. So if you can get them on board, they're going to come in and purchase more of your services, both through the tech tools and maybe even through some hourly services down the line. So no charge online, really important distinctions to decide upfront for when you're building out a product. So the next thing I want to talk about is really talk about what all the different legal service models that you could have are. So it kind of goes along a spectrum of, at the top you see here, we have informational products. So informational products would be things that you probably already have up. If you have a blog, you're already providing information to the end user. They're able to come on and get some basic pieces of information about the law. And you can provide tons of information online, but they're probably still going to need your legal services at some point. So usually those are provided for free. Next down the line, we have internally generated flat fee services that are aided by technology. So for example, you might have a divorce package that you're putting together, but you don't actually want your client to necessarily be part of the process. You want to continue having the same client relationship as you always had, where it's a one-on-one client relationship and they don't know how much technology you're using. That's possible, and but you would want to use some technology within your firm to expedite and make that work more efficient, so that you can generate those documents more quickly and provide potentially a lower cost product to your end users, which allows you to compete better with the outside market as well. Next down this line is data collaboration. So I always like to say that client intake is the gateway drug to document automation, because once you have a client intake tool out there and you're just starting to gather little bits of information from your client, like their names and their family members or whatever other information you need for your case, you start to realize how much more you could be automating. So people often don't stop at the data collaboration, but they move on to some of these other three categories that are below there. So subscription form sites. You may have documents that you're providing to your clients on a regular basis. And instead of having yourself be involved in that process every single time, what you could do is create a subscription form site where they pay a flat fee and they have access to generate those documents. So one area that we see this happen a lot is in employment law, or in corporate formation, anything that is a template that your client could use on their own, and might be using multiple times in a row. And keep in mind that, right now we're talking about, I think we talk a lot about the consumer being your client, but another potential client is other lawyers. So when you're building legal products, you could be building a legal product that you sell to other lawyers so that they can better serve their clients, because you've kind of synthesized and spent the time to build this tool. So that's subscription form sites. The second to last one here is that TurboTax model that I mentioned. I know whenever I bring this up with people who are not in the US, people are always saying, what's TurboTax? So TurboTax is often an analogy that we use here in the US for these types of tools, but it's essentially a tool that helps you enter a bunch of information and it helps you file your taxes. And taxes in the US are very complicated, but it takes all that information and uses all this complex logic on the back end to figure that out. So the reason I use this analogy is because you can do the same for any area of law, or any area of law that's kind of rules based. So you could take a questionnaire and lead people down different paths and then synthesize that information and put into documents and provide that to the end user. So a full-fledged legal technology application. And that could be document automation, where there's a document being generated at the end. It could actually be decision automation even. You don't necessarily have to have a document at the end. You could tell people whether they're eligible for something through that workflow. And then finally, packaging it up and having a combination of different tools that you provide to people. You could be providing technology plus maybe 2 hours of your advice, or technology plus attorney review of the documents. There's so many different ways and models that you could be providing your services to end users. So again, kind of just wanted to break that down. We'll go through this slide pretty quickly, but really there are internal tools and there are external facing tools. So think about both as you're thinking about what you want to provide to your end users. So the next thing I want to do is talk about the document assembly or the document automation lifecycle. So what we're going to talk about is what you should be thinking about before you build a legal tech product, what you should be thinking about during the process, and then finally, what you should be doing after the fact to get it out, to launch it, to market it. One of the kind of first things you'll want to do is really survey the landscape and see what's out there and what information and assets you have in-house that you could turn into legal products. And that leads us to our scoping activity. So what we're going to do is, when we're thinking about what we're going to build, we want to first define the project. I think this is one of the biggest mistakes people make up front, is creating or having an idea that is too broad early on. It's wonderful to have really big ideas about what you want your tool to be at the end. But when you start out, you want to start out with the very smallest minimum viable product, the very most synthesized version of that. So scoping your project appropriately to make sure that you have something that is rules-based, that it lends itself to some form of automation, and that it's narrow. So what I like to say is think big, start small, and iterate quickly. So this piece is the think big and start small piece. So if maybe you're a family law lawyer and you want to build legal tech for all of family law. You want anyone's family law needs to be able to be met online. Wonderful, big dream to have. That's a great way to start from a mental perspective, and it will really help you be successful if you have these big ideas. But the first version of your product should be something very simple, like maybe it's uncontested divorces in a very specific area, in a very specific jurisdiction. Because what that's going to help you do is you're going to learn so much from your early users. They're going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. They're going to get stuck on pieces of the product. And you're going to be able to change that very quickly because you have such a small project. And then when you decide you're going to move on to expand that scope, it's going to be very easy because you have all these lessons that you've learned. As opposed to launching and waiting years to launch a big product and then having to fix all these little things that people ask you about and people are having trouble with across the board in multiple areas of law and multiple jurisdictions. So just keep that in mind in terms of scoping. You also want to think about who your users are and be very specific about who they are. It's really good to have audience clarity. You may want to have both lawyers and businesses and also consumers be your client at the end. But those are three very different audiences, and you're going to craft your legal product in very different ways if you're gonna be launching it. So start with one of those and build to their needs, and then you can iterate on that. Make sure you understand their pain points and what features they're looking for. What are the alternatives that exist out there? So this takes us to the due diligence stage. What are the alternatives that exist out there, and what's the status quo? I'm a big believer that just because there's already a product or tool that exists out there, that does not mean that you should not build it. People have all kinds of ways to solve their problem, but if you see that there's a pain point or that there are deficiencies in that other form that they're launching, that they're satisfying their needs, then that is a window of opportunity for you to create something new. So think about that and incorporate that into your practice. And I think this is a really big part of design thinking and legal design thinking, is interviewing your users and making sure that you've developed the right understanding of their current needs and problems. So I told you guys a little bit earlier that when I was launching our domestic violence platform, we made lots of mistakes early on. And so that comes in on these last 2 points on the due diligence section right here, cost and sustainability. Those were our 2 biggest problems, because what we did is we launched this product and we were selling it only in California and only in specific counties for $15 per time that you went through the process. But what we didn't think about was that we didn't already have a channel to get clients into our platform. We weren't a law firm. We were building a brand new technology company. We didn't have current clients other than our legal aid clients. And so we were putting up Google Ads. And those Google Ads were costing us on average $20 for each time someone would come onto our website. So clearly you can see that you can't really make that up in volume, because if you're spending $20 to gain a client and you're only charging them $15, it's not really working out. So that's why I like to bring this up early. Think about what your channels are going to be to customer acquisition. How are you going to get people onto the platform? Maybe they're already your current clients. Those are going to be your first people, and then you have to pay $0 to get them on. This works really well for legal aid organizations. So what we did with our domestic violence platform is we kind of pivoted from selling to consumers to providing the tool to legal aid organizations, because legal aid organizations already had the channels to find these clients. And members of the public already knew, if I have a problem and I'm trying to file a domestic violence restraining order, I'm going to go to my local legal aid, or I'm going to go to my local court. That's already top of mind for them. So those organizations don't have to market that. So either having a set in stone channel, but whereby you're going to be bringing clients in, or having stakeholders that you're going to work with who already have those channels. Or, I mean, alternatively, a lot of our clients just sell their product for much more. So if you're able to sell your product, if it's a for example, we have a tax client who sells a product that is $1,000 every time you go through the platform, that you're going to be able to pay quite a bit on Google Ads to get people onto that platform. So cost and sustainability are important. One last point I'll say about that is think about recurring revenue models. So, obviously in something like domestic violence, you don't want recurring revenue, because that is not a good thing for your clients. You don't want them to be going through that process over and over again. Probably true about a lot of family law areas. You don't want your clients to be for their own good. You don't want them to be getting divorced multiple times. But if you have something like a subscription site for a business, or maybe even estate planning where it needs to be continuously updated, or where you're maintaining something for them, and those are different areas that you may want to have on a recurring revenue model. And your billable hour is really a cap on your revenue, because you can only work so many hours and you can only charge so much. So recurring revenue is a really good option to explore in terms of other business models. Now, finally, just in this last category, before you build, make sure you engage users, engage potential users, get information from them on what they want, manage their expectations on that process, and know that you're addressing some unique problems that they have. So that's what you're going to do before you build. Alongside that, you're going to want to develop questions and templates for your end product. Now, the next thing I want to talk about, actually, let's talk about the part of the process of the building process. And I'm also going to talk more about this once we actually go into a little demo and start building out a real product, together for a very basic employee offer letter at the end of the session. So, but while you're building, as I said, think about your audience and focus on them. But what I really like to do is build a process map. And that can be done just on a piece of paper. I sometimes just do them in Word by doing little bullet points and indenting them where there needs to be logic. But another good tool for this is Lucidchart. I love using Lucidchart to kind of map out a diagram of how my end product should look and what different logical pathways people should be going down. In Lucidchart, you'll want to control the order of your questions. So for example, let's say you're building out a divorce platform. You may want to ask about questions about the person's, whether they're married, well, obviously they're married, whether they have children, whether they have property together. And based on those questions, you'll ask a variety of different questions. But you're going to want to set gateway questions up front. You want your end user to answer as few questions as possible before they get their answer. And so if they don't have children, you're going to want to hide everything that relates to children from them. If they don't have property, you're going to want to hide everything that relates to property from them. Because that's particularly if you're dealing with self-represented litigants or consumers, that's going to be your biggest barrier to them understanding how to move forward, is you want to make it as simple as possible. What we see a lot is court forms and government forms. They have so much information on them. And so that's why people are often not able to take advantage of their legal rights, is because it's so overwhelming to look at a form that is asking you all these questions that could potentially not be relevant to you. But if you collapse that information and ask them one by one and have conditional triggers, that really simplifies it mentally for your end user. And then make sure you've considered all potential scenarios. So if you're going to provide a legal tool online, one of the things you're going to want to do is make sure that if there are things that you should kick someone out for, red flags that go up because they need to actually consult a lawyer for something, you tell them up front. You kick them out and you say, hey, you've answered these questions in a way that lead us to believe that you should talk to a lawyer. Please don't proceed with this workflow. Let's talk. And that, those are also opportunities for you to bring people into your sales funnel to actually be able to sell them your own legal services. And then finally, as you're building, make sure you're reviewing for grade level of the language. I often suggest that for most products that you're going to be selling, you're going to want or providing to the public, whether it's a for-profit tool or a non-profit tool, you're going to want something that is about a 6th grade reading level, because that's going to provide most people the ease of going through. And we'll talk about user experience testing in a second, but you'll kind of find out where people are getting stuck. And then make sure as we said, you're gonna know who your audience is, and you're gonna have some clarity on that, and that will help you decide how you want to craft your questions, how much additional information you want to provide people, and how much additional guidance you want to provide them. And then accessibility is also super important. So one of the things you can do on the Documate platform is insert videos and long explanatory text and audio. So those will be very useful for guiding your user through the platform. I love when lawyers actually put a video of themselves in the middle of their workflows and really guide the user through the platform, because that's going to give it another personal touch that is going to make people feel more comfortable. In addition to that, you might want to gamify the process a little bit. So cool company here in the US is that I want to give you as an example of that is a company called Upsolve. They do automated bankruptcy filings, and bankruptcy is a tough and potentially very emotional legal process for many people who are going through it. But what they do is they provide you encouragement and pictures and really lots of motivation throughout the process. One of their pages talks about all the celebrities who have filed for bankruptcy. And so I think that's a really fun way to make people feel good about and positive about taking advantage of their legal legal rights, as opposed to feeling ashamed like many people do, depending on obviously the area of law. So at this point of the process, we have talked about before building, we've talked about some of the considerations you should have while you're building your product. And now what I want to talk about is after you build your MVP. So the hardest step is getting it out there. You've built a software product. Now, how do you get attention towards your product? You're going to want to educate your customer. And this is not all just through the tool itself. This could be through a ton of marketing material that you have around it, blog posts, videos, you really getting out there and educating people about what your product is and why it's so important and why they should trust you. So that's just kind of talking about that marketing piece. You know, you want to build credibility for yourself on why people should be coming to you, as opposed to going to you as a lawyer individually for your hourly services or going to another lawyer. Talk to them about kind of all the things that you've thought about and considered throughout your product. Your About Me page is going to be super important because people always want to know who's behind that product, especially nowadays when there are so many tools online for them to be able to take advantage of. So building credibility and making sure that you're getting conversions through that process. Two other things you're going to want to do are, one, testing and getting feedback. So building user profiles and doing user testing is very important. One of the methods of doing this is just taking some users that you provide your product to for free early on and sitting behind them, whether that's in person or on some sort of Zoom call. You sit behind them and you watch them go through your product. And what you're going to see is they're going to get stuck in certain places. If they are stuck on a page, you ask them why. And that's going to help you understand what you need to change. So again, this goes back to starting small. If you started small and you have a minimal, a smaller product that you've launched initially, you're going to learn from those lessons. And then every product and document and tool that you tack onto that, you're going to be able to incorporate those lessons in there. So that's user testing. And then when you launch, your job is not done right when you launch a legal product. You are going to need to provide support and documentation and optionally services. So support, customer support, everyone expects it from software tools nowadays. Doesn't necessarily need to be you, but you need to have someone who is answering phones or answering emails about about specific questions that people may have on their tools, on the process that they're going through, and how they can get additional help. Documentation, so provide ample documentation. That can be through videos or through written materials, or it could be actually embedded in your application that you're building to help people launch and help people through your launch. And then services. So you may decide that you're going to provide services after the fact to people who need things that are more complex or more robust than what you have. Or if you don't, what I recommend is having partners that you're going to refer to. So if someone has a case that's more complex or they need to go into litigation, if you don't want to be supporting that, then have referral programs put in place so that you can send people down other paths and to other locations. When we were building the domestic violence platform, what we did is we listed for every single time that you encountered a situation that was outside of the scope of the tool, we had people go directly to a list of people who might be available to them through legal aid organizations that were local to them. So that's so far we've sort of talked about the whole process, and we could probably spend an entire session on each of those because there's so much juice and meat in there that we could be talking about. But what I want to do next is first give you kind of some examples of what exists out there, some real use cases that you could hopefully get some inspiration from, and then I want to jump into showing you a quick demo of Documate and how you can build your own tool. So going into some examples, I'm going to start with this one. This one is for a legal aid organization who was doing name and gender change forms. Previously, what they were doing is they had clinical programs where, and this was obviously, this all started before the pandemic. So they had people coming into their clinic on Saturdays, and they would address their situations one by one. That person would sit in front of a lawyer would take down their information and would fill out all their forms, provide them the forms, and allow them to go file them with the court. They found that that was very burdensome, and a lot of these forms were pretty repetitive, and it was a very rules-based, process-oriented system that they were able to set up. So what they decided is they were going to automate all of this. So they got onto the platform and they built out a question tree, as you can see here, and this all generates about 20 different documents that you could file for name changes, gender changes, minor name changes, and a variety of ancillary documents that accompany that. So now, they actually did not put this in the hands of their clients fully. So again, this shows you what you could do and what the different models could be, but they just provided this to their attorneys, who were both pro bono attorneys, who were volunteers, and lawyers and attorneys from the legal aid organization, who can then sit in front of the client and enter the client's information and generate those documents. So it serves as a way to cut down the time, because they were able to get each one of these done in about 10% of the time that it used to take them to generate these documents. But also it helps provide training for the lawyers who are using it. Because if you have a new pro bono attorney who's never done one of these cases, they might have read up all about the area of law, but they may still be a little bit unfamiliar with this. So this helps them go through that process and really understand how to generate those documents without creating any errors. So that's one. Another one that I want to show you is a subscription form site. So this one's called Fresh Leads, of a law firm that who did a lot of landlord-tenant work. And what they built is, for their residential landlords, they built out a platform where wherever you were, whichever state or county you're in, you could always come onto the platform and get an updated lease agreement for your tenants. And it's always going to have the most updated law, because that was always changing, and they were finding that landlords weren't able to take advantage of the most and recently updated law, or weren't being compliant in certain areas where there were new regulations. So this platform was a subscription platform, and I think it's a really great idea for this type of platform, because they charge a low yearly fee actually here, and their consumer can continue taking advantage of what tools exist out there. Next, I want to talk about briefly another tool that was built. This one is actually a really great example of a complex legal tool that was built for transfer pricing and for certain tax areas. And the reason I love this one is because not only is it very complex, they have tons of complex logic and calculations. So it shows you the power of no code, but also it is a good example of how you can take a platform and turn it into multiple languages. So LCN Legal, they built out a platform in English first. Then they had lots of clients in China. So they duplicated it and just translated all the Chinese questionnaires into Chinese, and all the English questionnaires into Chinese. And they were able to have a platform in Chinese. And I believe they're also launching one in Portuguese as well. So, probably a heavy investment for the English platform in terms of time to get this really amazing, robust platform set up. But then it's just a translation project to get it launched in these other areas. And then finally, I want to show you guys another example, Hello Divorce, which the reason I like to show this one is because they have so many different options here in terms of their membership that really meet the client where they are. So when we were talking earlier about the different types of products that you could be providing, whether it's an informational product or whether it's a full-fledged legal product with some advice tied in, this is an example of that. You can give them, what they start off with is a DIY, or they have they start out with the starter membership, which is a free membership, and then they have the DIY platform, which is for the person who really wants to just do the self-checkout at the grocery store and not talk to anyone. And then if you're not that type of person, they can give you everything up through a little bit of hand-holding to all the hand-holding and some legal coaching through that process. So meeting your client where they are. I recommend when you get started to only provide one option, but then as you go on, you can provide these other options and kind of build them as you get requests from clients. So at this point, we've gone through some examples, and hopefully these are all inspirational and these give you guys ideas of what you would want to build. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a quick demo of Documate. So Documate is made up of kind of three different steps, 2 steps really. Third step is launching it. First is the questionnaire, where you build out all of the questions that you want to have as your client-facing questions and add logic to those. The second is your output documents. So that's where you're going to provide, you're going to connect all of your documents. So whether those are PDF documents or Word documents or DocX documents, you can kind of upload those, tag them to the different fields you had. And the final step is launching it. So then you're able to launch it for your clients and have that be a tool that you either monetize or you provide to your clients as a service. So I'm going to give you guys a quick demo of the platform. And so let me just switch my shared screen here over to the Documate screen and share this with you guys. There we go. And I'm going to give you a pretty quick overview of this. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but if you're interested in a more extensive demo, I'll just put our calendar link into the chat here because I don't want to bore you with a product demo during this session. So if you have more detailed questions, you want to go through your own use case, that's our calendar link. You can always book a time and we're happy to walk you through every single piece of the platform as well. But here we have the Documate platform. So if any of you guys decide to use this, we kind of modeled this after all the things that we needed for our domestic violence platform and for many other areas that we now have clients in across the board. Doesn't matter what your area of law is. As you saw, there are tax platforms, there are domestic violence platforms, there are name change platforms, there are, the A2J tech team has built eviction defense platforms and name change platforms across multiple different states. So there are lots of different areas that you could do this in. And honestly, it doesn't have to even be legal. We have salespeople who build platforms here. We have HR people who build tools. We even have someone who was building a resume builder who's automated that process. So it could really be anything that's document-based or not, or decision-based. So the one that I want to show you today is this employee offer letter right here. And the reason I want to show you this example is because it's a very basic document, but it gives you all the building blocks to build something much more robust with multiple documents and hundreds of pages of questions. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what the end product looks like. So if I click this run button here, it's going to open up a tab. And I'm going to be able to go through this platform. I can say my name is Jane Doe. I can enter my information on how much this person gets paid. I can say they're married. And if I say they're married, it's going to ask me what's their spouse's name. Maybe I say it's Jack Doe. And then I can do all kinds of lists. So I can say, if I say I have children, I can say, okay, my first child's name is Jesse, born on 1/2/2000. And then my second child's name is John, born on 2/2/2002. You can keep adding as many as you want. So that's the capability of adding lists that will, I think, be really powerful for a lot of you guys who are building tools like that. And then you just continue through this process. This is a super simple workflow, but I add my signature to the end. If you want to add signatures, you review all your answers on the final page. And at the very end of the process, you are able to generate your documents and they're going to be generated for you here on the screen. But if you wanted to, this is just 2 documents. You could have had a packet of 30 documents if you wanted. And then if you wanted, you could also have the documents not displayed to the end user and instead have this be more of a client intake process where you then send your documents back to your firm. So that's the end product. But obviously anyone can, hire a developer to build them the most amazing application. But what you want to see is how can you build this yourself? is this easy enough for you to use on your own? And hopefully I will be able to show you how easy it is. So we'll click into this employee offer letter workflow right here. And what this takes us to is the builder screen. So the builder screen is made up, as you saw on those PowerPoint slides, it's made up of two main tabs, the questions tab right here and the output documents tab right here. So the questions tab is where you're going to create all the questions that are relevant to your end documents. So it could be things like, what's your name and what's the street address, other questions that you may want to ask. The output documents tab is where you're going to load all of your templates. So that could be, whether they're court forms or government forms, you can add those there as well. And then the process after that is to launch it. So let's go to the very bottom of this questions tab and we can click add question. And the add questions tab allows you to choose from a variety of different question types. So whether that's a text question or a text area question, you have multiple choice questions, which are single select, or checkbox questions, or multi-select, a lot of different options of data validation that you can use. And then you can also add instructions, which are not necessarily questions. And you can also add payment modules, kickout pages, and signatures. So lots of different options as to different types of questions you can add here. When you add a question, you then add a variable name to every single question. So here I asked the question, what's your marital status? And I gave it the variable name marital status. The variable name can be whatever you want it to be, but I usually like to use something that's really simple and self-explanatory. I gave it 3 options: married, single, and divorced. Now, I want to show you a few different pieces of logic. The first piece of logic I want to show you is question logic. So question 8 is, what is your spouse's name? If I click on these branching logic arrows right here, I only want this question to appear if the person's married. So if I click on these branching logic arrows here, what I'm going to be able to do is add some logic here that says, show if, I can choose from all my variables that existed before, marital status is married. And then that means that this question will only appear if marital status is married. Now, you can also add the same type of logic to different pages. So as you can see, I have 4 different pages here. You can have many more. You can add page logic up here, but that anywhere you see these branching logic arrows, you can add logic. So now you can add many questions, but the next piece of the process is the output documents. So I'm going to quickly show you that as well. I'm going to show you, you can do this with both PDF documents and Word documents. So what I'm going to show you is with a Word document, because Word documents are a little bit more malleable. There's a lot more you can do in them. So there's a little bit more power that you can use here. So let's go over to our Word document. So I'm going to use my Word document directly from Word. And what this means is that any formatting that you already have in your Word documents is going to remain intact, no matter how you decide that you're going to load it to the system, and no matter what logic you add in there. So let me go ahead and choose my, I'm on Word Online, but you can use this on Word for Mac, Word for PC. It works on all of them. So the functionality that you can use in your document is pretty much unlimited, but I'll show you a few of the different options here. You can use some simple variables. So let's say I wanted to just insert my employee's name here. That was one of my variables. I can insert the variable like that, and it inserts the employee name here. So you don't need to learn any of the syntax on your own. It's all being inputted by our side panel here. You can do all kinds of formatting options. If you can bold it, italicize it, make sure that your final version is exactly how you want it to be. And then that's simple variables. That works a little bit like mail merge. So basic, very, very simple. But you can also add logic. So let's say I wanted to show a particular paragraph if marital status is married. And I can add additional conditions here. I can say if marital status is married and children is more than 2. You could put all kinds of logic in there. But let's start with something really basic. So let's say show phrase when marital status is married. Then what I'll do is I'll drag my cursor over a section that I want to be conditional, like that. And then I'll click insert condition. As you can see, there are some bookends that have basically been inserted here. So there's a starting bookend and an ending bookend here. Starting bookend just says if marital status is married. We inserted that here. And then the ending bookend just says end if right here. So that is the logic that's being placed here. You can go deep with your logic, do nested logic, do multiple document logic. That's all possible as well. You can also do numerical calculations. So if you had assets that you wanted to add up or expenses that you wanted to remove, that's also possible. You can do date calculations. So let's say someone gives you their date of birth and you want to calculate their age. You could do that with this instead of asking them a question about each one of those. Or let's say they give you the date of their hearing and you want to tell them they have until X date to some papers. Then you can say, you know, add or subtract time from a particular date that they've given you. And then finally, we have these repeating items, which we didn't go into detail with today, but basically allowing you to format something in a particular way as a list, as a multi-line list with inside of a table where you have those multi-object lists.
Boy.
And then the final step, so what we've reached now is just a quick bird's eye view. We've now created all of our questions. We have added logic to all those questions. We've created all of our documents and we've loaded them here and we're now able to run. So those are kind of all the basic steps to launching a very simple workflow. And there's a lot more functionality that you can add on there as well. So that's the end of my demonstration. And I know that Mauricio is going to talk a little bit about kind of some of the implications for both document automation and productization in Latin America, and then would love to answer any questions that anyone has as well.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Dorna. I'm actually doing this really fast because you probably covered most of it, of certain topics, which is good, which means that we're both aligned in our thinking of how creating a legal tech product or solution goes. The mindset that you described is probably the same mindset that we have at A2J. And I'm going to share my screen and I'm not going to go through all the solutions that we have created, but these are just sample solutions that we have created and use this document as the core technology in all of them. And we're going to have even more projects coming along, but these are just a few, say, examples of what you can create using Documate. So one of them that Dorna was mentioning was this one, that is COVID-19 eviction forms. We created this solution as a free tool in the US, in which you can create a declaration letter to avoid eviction in the US. So for instance, if I press start, let's say I can press any state, and I'm just gonna show you how can we create something. And if I want to create the CDC declaration that you need in the US to avoid eviction due to the pandemic, I'm going through this, let's say, user interface, but in the powering technology is being documented. For instance, we changed because it comes with some custom coding that we have very good professionals that can do some custom coding and changing how the user interface looks. But here it is documented, and you can see here down at the bottom. At the end, we are using Document to create any of the documents that we, or any type of products that we're trying to produce. That's just one example. The other one that probably Dorna spoke to this as well and mentioned it is Hello Divorce, because this one, it's a bit more complex of showing you how it works, because it has something that is called the Divorce Navigator, which is actually the solution that walks you through the phases of divorce and the forms or the documents that you need to automate and file within the courts. But this one, I think it's one of the most successful projects in legal tech in general, because it showed, or it was a true example of how you can disrupt and innovate in something as complex and sometimes as delicate as divorces. And because you're not only handling legal matters, but sometimes you're handling emotional matters. And I think that Aaron has created a platform in which you don't only think about the legal aspect of a product, but you also think about the emotional aspects that go within the process, and that goes to legal design and asking your users, what do you want? How do you envision the use of this product? And actually, as Dorna mentioned, Aaron always gives a free trial to prospective users so they can play around and say, look, I don't understand this. sentence, I don't understand this document, I need the wording of this section of the divorce navigator in a better way. So still, this platform has as a powering technology Documate. And the last one that I'm going to show you, because we've been collaborating with Hello Divorce and Documate, this one is, again, something that Dorna mentioned, is changing your names. So for instance, this one is in Colorado, that you need different forms and different documents to change your name that you got to file. And sometimes, again, we got to be, I call it the objective and honest assessment of the role of an attorney, that sometimes we want to sell that we do extraordinary stuff, and sometimes we do, but other times it's more customizing templates, creating standardized documents. So here it's again another platform that we created that is powered by Documate, in which you can change your name and file those documents to change your name. In Colorado, we have one in Wyoming as well. We're looking the next one in Michigan. So again, those are the few examples of things that you can create with something as simple with Documate. Again, it goes to additional stuff, like for instance, if you're gonna create a website, if you're gonna create the graphic design of the layout and additional things. But I would say that if you're using Documate, probably you got a 60% done of the current technology if you're looking at productizing legal services, or at least productizing legal documents and legal forms. So if you want to create like a legal Zoom or a Rocket Lawyer that I know that in Latin America we don't have right now, you can use Document as the powering technology. So again, I do suggest to everyone that if you want to learn more about Documate, there are two, let's say, you're making free merchandise about our Udemy course, but we have one Udemy course with Documate, and I'm gonna send the link through the chat if you want to learn more and get more of a practical approach. Dorna did an excellent job of showing how it works, but in this Udemy course, we go more into detail about how things, formatting certain documents or certain PDF documents. So if you want to learn even more, I'm gonna share that link with you. And the other thing is, again, Dorian is always open and very receptive about having a scheduled meeting. So if you're interested in having Document for a potential project in Latin America, and I know that many projects in Latin America are using Document right now. For instance, one project in Peru is using it for child support and spousal support. And there are many other platforms that are starting to use Document. So again, if you are interested in developing your own legal tech product, remember, it comes down to two elements. One is going to be, what is your product? What do your users want? But also look into the technologies that you might need to create that solution. And again, always think of the MVP, test it on the market, and then you can enhance and create a better solution. So I guess, because we are running now on the time frame, that I will probably ask if someone has any questions. We can ask, probably have a bit of time. If someone has a question, it could be in English or it can be in Spanish, and I can translate. And if no one has a question, I probably can launch the first one. Torna, probably one of the few ones, is, can Documate be, let's say, the user interface or the graphical user interface that you see? Can it be translated to Spanish? So for instance, if someone wants to start a project in Latin America, but they need their questions and the whole flow of the product in Spanish, can that be done within Document?
Yes, absolutely. And Mauricio, you gave a great example of the project out of Peru, and they've actually done exactly that. So I'm going to send the link to they have a video they did on their project when they first started out, and now it's even more robust. But that's Epicia. Someone else also just mentioned it in the chat. So I just sent the video over, and they've done exactly that. So they have all their questions in Spanish, all the buttons are in Spanish. They've really customized the whole platform. So definitely possible. Great question.
So I don't know if someone else has a question. I know we're running a few minutes over our time, but if no one else has a question, I think I don't have anything else. Dora, then again, thank you for taking the time and showcasing a bit about Document and explaining a bit about Document. I know that at least some of the participants in this call are going to have now a new avenue of creative thinking, in the sense that they now know that there is a legal tech tool that can help them create their legal tech product or solution. So again, I'm going to be sharing right now the link to the Udemy course, so everyone can, if you're interested, you can sign up. Again, not to brag, but it has been quite successful in the US. We had
thousands and thousands.
Yeah, we had 4,630 students as of today.
It's amazing.
So it's been pretty good. So if you want to learn, again, how to use Documate, I'm sending the link right now through the chat, so you can take a look and see if it interests you to explore any potential project. So rather than that, again, thank you, Dorna. I think everyone's applauding virtually your take and your conference. So thank you again. I don't think there are any more questions, but if you could, I don't know, Dorna, if you have like a point of contact, where can people reach out to you if they're interested in, let's say, having a demo with Documate or more questions about Documate?
Definitely, absolutely. Yeah, thank you guys, everyone, for being here. And I see Lacey is also on the call. Hi, Lacey. Thank you guys for being here, and definitely go check out that Udemy video. And I'll just I'll put my email and my Twitter and my calendar link here in the chat. Although you guys probably have a lot of stuff in the chat now, so. But feel free to just reach out to me by email if you need anything as well.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dorna. So I guess that's it for today, everyone. Thank you again for being a part of today's Legal Hackers Meetup. We're going to be uploading this event as well on YouTube, so you can watch it if you've missed a part of it. So again, thank you, Dorna, and thank you, everyone else. I hope you have a great evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Good job, Dorna.
Thank you.